Welcome to the Mentors and Moguls podcast, your source for the inside scoop from some of the world's most accomplished business leaders, athletes, and creatives on how they've achieved success. I'm Heather Stone, a serial entrepreneur with a passion for helping others to overcome challenges and discover their untapped potential. Join me and our guests as we teach you how to break through those barriers on the way to crushing your goals. In each episode, I dive into a new topic with an inspiring mentor to find out exactly how they overcame obstacles, slayed self-doubt, and achieved their goals. Today's expert mentoring session is about to start, so grab your pen and let's dive in. Have you ever dreamed of becoming a writer? Or better yet, are you a writer with your sights set on your first publishing deal? Our next guest is an accomplished novelist and writer. Today, she will be sharing her experience and strategy to help you find success with your next book. Nicole Meier landed a publishing deal with her very first book and hasn't looked back since. Nicole is here to share her methods and strategy to claiming your spot on the bookshelf. Hi, Nicole. I am so excited that you've joined us today. You're going to share a little bit of your wisdom about being an author, a writer, and a creative. Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
For those that don't know Nicole Meier, she is a phenomenal author. She's got several books out, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But I'm hoping that you can start off by telling our listeners a little bit about your journey. When did you decide to become an author? Did you always want to become an author? Tell us a little bit about your personal experience.
Yeah, so I grew up, loving to read probably more than the average kid. And I actually went on to college for creative writing. But when I graduated college, I just didn't have the courage or maybe the self-esteem to go out and write books on my own. So I took jobs shadowing editors at magazines and working in different creative fields. And it really wasn't until almost my 40th birthday, which kind of felt like a big milestone to me at the time, that I just decided, you know what, I need to get back into my first true love, and that was writing. So that kind of began small, right? So I started writing freelance pieces for newspapers and magazines. And then I started my own blog, which was kind of like a fun travel and reading blog. And then finally, from there, I decided to try writing my first manuscript for a novel.
Well, it's interesting that you use the word shadow. You shadowed someone, which I associate immediately with someone that doesn't have enough experience or doesn't have enough self-confidence to jump out and be the lead. Did you have a mentor that you shadowed? Was there anybody that was a major influence in your writing career?
I didn't have a mentor early on, but I certainly learned things, especially from working with editors. I learned about the power of just, refining work and resubmitting work. And then certainly as I started to write freelance pieces on my own for different magazines, I really learned, how to accept critique gracefully. I learned how to work on a deadline. So I think from different people in the industry, I gleaned something new each time I had a project. But really, in terms of mentors, I didn't have anybody early on other than one literary agent in particular who I didn't wind up signing with, but she helped me just with some really powerful notes on my first manuscript. And that kind of gave me the kickstart and the courage that I needed.
Like everything, you've got to work your way up through trial and error, get enough experience under your belt when you're ready to kind of fly on your own without training wheels, so to speak. So would you recommend that someone take classes? Are there courses? What would you recommend to someone else who's maybe an emerging author, wants to write articles, wants to write a blog, or dare I say it, wants to create their very first novel? What would you recommend they do as far as seeking out guidance or help outside of themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a lot of creative people, whether they're a writer or a painter or a songwriter, they tend to work in a bubble and they work quietly alone. And then it's really hard to get feedback. So I would definitely say early on, even if your writing is rough, to get a critique group going, take a class, get feedback from someone who's trusted, which means not your mother, because she'll just say she loves you no matter what. You need someone who's really going to give you kind of the cold, hard truth. And, even as seasoned as I am, it still stings to get feedback that you don't love, but it is so important because you just need an outsider's perspective sometimes on your work. And that's the only way you're going to grow.
I heard a few words in your answer, and it was the cold hard truth, and it stings. And so all I hear is rejection, rejection. That takes a lot of gumption to get back up after you get rejected or critiqued. What advice would you give to someone that really is, they have thin skin?
Yeah, that's a good question too, because it is an industry that's full of rejection. I probably just like it is to produce your own music or to become an actor. There is a lot of rejection and there are a lot of no's before you get the yeses, but really it only takes one yes. So for me, I actually wrote a practice novel that lives in a drawer that never will see the light of day. But for myself, I had to write my very first manuscript to see A, if I had what it takes to hang in there and finish it, and B, to get a little bit of feedback from people I trust in the business, but not with a purpose of having it be published. So that's one answer. And then the other one is to know that, yes, your work is going to be loved by someone, but not loved by everyone. And I think if you know that going in, it doesn't hurt as much when you do get the criticism or sort of the constructive critiques that will come back. And most of the time, what you get back is correct. I'll look back at old work and say, wow, I really wasn't ready to put this out in the world yet. I'm so glad that I listened to the notes and I reworked the piece. So, it's a journey for sure.
So you've got to learn to live with the rejection, not take it so personally, and just know these people are trying to help you. And if you can take that and learn from it and apply it, maybe version 2.0 might be better for everyone.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what has been the greatest or the biggest reward that you can think of from writing your first book? How did it feel when you got that first book in your hand, glossy cover, it's got your name on it as the author, maybe you had a book launch party. What was that like for you emotionally?
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, as every emerging writer has this dream where you will be holding your hardback or your paperback book. It really is a special feeling. And even though I have 3 books out now, that debut is the one that feels the most special because it was the first time that I saw, my work on the shelves of a bookstore. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a great payoff, but I will just keep reminding your listeners that it is a journey. Someone once told me that the average overnight success is 15 years. Like, it is a journey. You can't just sit down one month and write a book and then just expect that it's going to be, in Barnes and Noble in a year. It's a lot of work. And I think that's what makes the payoff even greater when you finally see the end product is, you put your heart and soul into it.
Okay, so speaking of 15 years, well, I don't know if too many people have that much tenacity. Obviously, you do. So talking a little bit about the timing and the length of time and the length of commitment, do you think that you would have ever dropped that commitment? Would anything have made you step away from that path? Or better yet, what are the secrets to staying committed?
Oh, yeah. You have to have passion and you have to love it and you have to want to do it very, very badly. I know several writers who have given up because, they wrote something, they got a little bit of criticism and they just thought, oh, it's too much. I don't have time for this. I don't have, the heart for this. You have to want it very badly. And I think that goes for anyone. Professional athletes have to want it very badly because they put their bodies through so much. And artists have to want it very badly because there are a lot of, closed doors before one opens. You have to, kind of be disciplined. I definitely write every single day, every single morning. Sometimes it's ugly, sometimes it's not fun, but you have to want it. Otherwise, no one else is going to want it more for you than yourself.
That's something that I talk about all the time to my listeners is you've got to know what your why is, and your why has to be consistent. Otherwise, you will walk away or give up when you have the first sign of a challenge, right?
Absolutely.
So writing fiction, I can't imagine coming up with a story. I'm just not that imaginative, quite frankly, but clearly you are. I love reading your books. So writing fiction, does that come naturally and easy to you? Or do you really have to, how long does it take to come up with, okay, here's the basis for my next novel?
For me, it does come naturally. Certainly, there are parts of the book that don't come naturally. I always call the middle of my manuscripts the murky middle, because by the time I get to the middle, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Where is this going? But the premise usually comes to me via inspiration. And a lot of times that's from watching a movie or listening to a podcast or seeing an image in a newspaper or magazine. Truly, I have to say, all of my book premises have come from some spark of information or something I've seen in the media that I think, oh my gosh, that would be a great story.
Well, you do produce great stories. I've got one or two of your books that actually I would love to see be turned into a movie, quite frankly, because they've just got that depth and the characters are just so juicy. I would love to see them on the big screen. So I'll keep lobbying for that for you. Let's talk a little bit about your routine, a daily routine. I've heard you kind of hint at that through a few answers that you write every day. Do you have a daily routine, and do you suggest someone that wants to write has a daily routine?
Yes and yes. I know everybody's process is really different, but I got to say, from all my years of experience, the inspiration to just sit down and finish a book doesn't just like come one day. It's determination and it's discipline. So I wake up every morning, usually before my family wakes up and it's still dark out, and I write. So a lot of times what that looks like is I write from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. And then the rest of the day is for my other parts of my life. But I have to sit down every day and keep going because there's a certain flow that comes. It's kind of like exercising your creative muscle. If you don't exercise it, it gets sort of rusty. So you just keep going every day and add a little more to your work. And I've seen other people say, "Oh, I only write, when the muse comes." Well, guess what? Life gets in the way and then the muse gets pushed to the side. So I tell all my emerging writers that I come across, like, you've got to write every day.
What happens if you sit down to write, you've got your coffee? I can't imagine writing at 5 a.m, but good for you. You've got your coffee, you're sitting down, the house is quiet or wherever you are, and nothing comes out. Do you panic? What do you do?
That's a great question. And that totally happens. Okay, so I'll give you a couple examples because I don't believe in writer's block. I think there are many ways to go around it. So let's say I sit down to write a scene in a book, but I cannot come up with anything interesting. I'll just stop what I'm doing and take one or two of the characters from my book and have them write letters to each other. So that's one way to sort of get the creative juices flowing again. And usually something comes out of that. It's definitely not something I'm going to publish, but some idea comes from that. Another idea is to enhance the setting. I have a big bulletin board at my desk, and a lot of times I will go on Pinterest or get magazines and, cut and paste images that I think my setting should look like. And I'll just keep adding that to the bulletin board. And from that, something comes. I could pick out something as obscure as wallpaper and think, oh my gosh, I got to put that in my scene. And the next thing I know, I'm writing for 20 minutes about what that room looks like. So there's definitely activities, writing prompts, things that can get you back on track. It just takes some focus.
Okay, so I've never heard that from an author that I've interviewed, and I actually love that. I feel like you just gave us the real secrets to getting unstuck. So thank you for sharing that. Now that you're several books in, what do you think for you is the best part of being an author?
The letters and the feedback that I get from readers.
So you get letters.
Yeah, it's funny. I never really set out to have a specific goal when I wrote. I mean, certainly I'd love to just entertain people, but I didn't know that it would go deeper than that. And so I think it was my second book, The Girl Made of Clay. That's about a father-daughter relationship, and it's a lot about forgiveness. And I started to get letters from strangers as soon as that book published. People would write things like, gosh, I read your book and I'm now reconsidering forgiving my father. Or I've decided I'm going to call my sister who I haven't spoken to in a decade and give her another shot. Or maybe it's time to really face that family wound that I've been ignoring all this time. And that really meant a lot to me. I was so happy that something struck a chord with my readers.
Wow. Okay. So talking about the premise for your book, where do you come up with the ideas? Is it fact? Is it fiction totally? Is a little bit of both woven in?
It's a little bit of both. I try not to write about real life people, but I certainly draw from all my experiences, especially because all I write is family drama. And people always say, is there drama in your real family? I said, sometimes, but a lot of times I'll just take like what a dynamic is like and then sort of enhance that and make it more fictionalized. But yeah, I definitely draw on my real life.
Very interesting. Okay. Well, I know that you're very socially conscious, and I love the fact that you're constantly giving back. You give writers' workshops, you're mentoring emerging writers. Share a little bit about what your efforts are. What do you do with your workshops, and who is it for?
Yeah, those are really fun. I always, am eager to do those. Mostly the workshops I do are with young people. So I do some for adults, at wellness retreats and writers conferences and things like that. But the most fun to me, to be quite honest, is the classes I give to middle schoolers and high schoolers. Right now, we're actually talking obviously during a pandemic and everyone's at home. And it's amazing to me how young people have picked up on their creativity while they're at home. These kids aren't allowed to do competitive sports right now. They have all of their schools closed. They don't have a lot of work. And I know kids who have picked up the guitar or have started piano or started painting or started writing just because they're finally allowed to flex that creative muscle. So to answer your question, one of the things I'm doing right now is I've taken my creative writing workshops for young people and put it online. So we, do Zoom calls, we do writing prompts, we do activities. Twice a week we get together, and these kids are sending me amazing stories. I'm so proud of them.
That is terrific. Well, good for you for helping to encourage them. And who knows, maybe they'll be writing you letters someday from their best-selling novel and telling you thank you so much. Did you have a teacher in school, anywhere in your education that really inspired you and helped you tap into the fact that you love to write? Anybody encourage you more than others?
High school, that was a no. I wasn't a very good student in high school. Yeah, that was a big no. But college, I had a few professors. I think that college was difficult because I had a lot more male professors than female, and I really wished that that wasn't the case. Male professors sometimes only assign male authors to read, which really, I noticed that I have two kids in high school now, and I noticed that with their teachers as well. Hopefully that's changing. But yes, I certainly had one professor in college that I took a feminist lit course, and gosh, I just love being introduced to authors like Toni Morrison, and she was really sweet and kind of encouraged me. But yeah, in terms of teachers, I have to be really honest and say I wish I had more that kind of picked up on what I wanted to do.
Do you have a favorite author? Like if I said, okay, you're stranded on an island, you get one book or a series of books by one author, what would you choose?
Oh, that's easy. And I give this answer at every interview, and I'm sure that she's probably heard this by now and she's thinking I'm stalking her. But it's Sue Monk Kidd, and she wrote The Secret Life of Bees. She wrote The Invention of Wings, and she has a brand new book coming out, I think next week. And I just adore her.
Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully she knows all about you. So I know you didn't set out to be famous, but I have caught you on TV several times. Are you okay with that? Is that part of the deal that you're comfortable with now?
I think so. I mean, nobody really likes to see what they look like on screen.
Exactly. Well, we're on a podcast, so we're okay.
Yeah, but I think it's fine. You have to realize that all of these people you come across are just people. Everybody's just trying to connect. And once you realize that, it makes it a lot easier.
All right. So it's time for my three magic questions. I love to ask every guest these questions. Thinking back to your 20-year-old self, what one thing would you tell yourself to spend less time and energy on X? Because in the end, it really doesn't matter.
Ooh, yeah. Gosh. I think in my 20s, I was totally not listening to my authentic self. I was just trying to be like everyone else. And I was too afraid to be different.
Okay, so turn that around. In your 20s, looking back, what would you want to have spent more time and energy on if you could?
Yeah, getting quiet, blocking out the noise, and being creative.
What does happiness look like for you?
Oh, I'm pretty happy right now. Happiness looks like sunshine, palm trees, my family, and the ability to write every day.
Wow, what a great answer. I love it. All right. Well, this has been a fun conversation. I learned a lot that I didn't know, and I've known you for a while. Where can people find you? Where can they find your books?
Yes. So all of my books are in bookstores and online. I mean, right now, Amazon.com is kind of the best place, or BarnesandNoble.com, just because, paperback books aren't shipping at the moment. But you can also find me on my website, which is NicoleMeierAuthor.com.
Great. And they can find out if you're doing some more virtual classes and mentoring online, they can find you there as well.
Yes.
Terrific. And what's the name of your last book for the audience, please?
The Second Chance Supper Club.
It's a great read. Terrific. Well, thank you, Nicole. I can't wait to check in with you next time to see what's happening next. But for now, I appreciate the conversation, and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, you too.
That's all for this week. Thank you for listening to the Mentors and Moguls podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to rate and review the Mentors and Moguls podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find bonus video episodes at mentorsandmogulspodcast.com or check out our events page and our blog at heatherrstone.com. Until next time, make it a great day.